even as we go into the end of the year and we're trying to figure out how to finish 2023, you still have a chance to change directions and pivot. You have an opportunity right now to go in a different direction. And it's important for you and I to do that and consider that, because our world is moving very fast right now. So many things are happening. But you are the only person that could pivot in your own life. Nobody's going to do that for you. You got to make the decision that you're going to go in a different direction. Hi everybody, Lee Scott here. Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee, where we talk about life, leadership, and legacy. And we want to help you unleash your capacity and level of leadership. I'm so excited that you are here and that you are actually tuning in to this week's episode. But before I get into our subject for today, if you have not done it yet, go and subscribe to Leading with Lee on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. Well, I'm so grateful that you are here, and I'm going to share my subject here in a moment. But before I share my subject, I want to give you my leadership definition, which I give on every single episode of Leading with Lee. And it is this: I believe that leadership is seeing something that has not happened yet and taking people, personal processes, and organizations in that direction. I believe that leadership is seeing something that has not happened yet and taking people, organizations, and personal processes in that direction. Well, I'm so glad that you're here, because we're getting towards the end of the season here on Leading with Lee, and I wanted to talk about something that I kind of started the season with. If you've been watching or checking in throughout the year, I've been talking about leading from where you are in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And even some of the guests I've had come on this season have been folks who have been leaving a significant impact on their communities and their world from where they were. And I think it's important to kind of stay in that mind frame as we end the year. It's November, and the holiday season is here, and many of us are preparing to see family and different things like that. But you're thinking about and maybe reflecting on what has happened throughout 2023. And so today, I want to talk about the idea of finishing where you are. Finishing where you are. I got 4 points for you today, and I hope that they will inspire you to continue to move forward and do significant things. So here are my 4 points. Number 1, completion is rewarding. Number 2, you can move on. Number 3, finishing becomes a marker in life. And lastly, stay to see the results. So let's start with the first one, which is completion is rewarding. Many of us understand that there's something powerful about finishing tasks, right? Whether it is finishing your homework or finishing a book or finishing cleaning up your home or anything like that, there's some power in that. And I want to define completion, and it's defined as the action or process of finishing something. I see it happen every day in my work life, where when I'm helping families and students actually do what they need to do to complete their financial aid or complete any task they need to complete, there's something that happens in the brain that makes me feel like, oh, we have accomplished a task. And I was doing in my research, I found that there are four happy hormones, according to researchers at healthline.com. There are 4 happy hormones, and I'm going to give you those hormones. The 4 hormones are dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins. And these are the 4, they say these are the 4 happy hormones. So let's define them real quick. Dopamine is the neurotransmitters that are an important part of your brain's reward system. It is associated with persuadable senses, pleasure sensations, along with learning, memory, and more. Serotonin helps regulate your mood as well as your sleep, appetite, digestion, learning ability, and memory. Oxytocin is essential for childbirth, breastfeeding, and strong parent-child bonding. It can also help promote trust, empathy, and bonding in relationships. So these things are important. Levels generally increase with physical affection. And then the last one, which we probably have talked a lot about, is endorphins. Endorphins is the body's natural pain reliever when your body produces in response to stress or comfort. Levels may also increase when you're engaged in reward producing activities such as eating, working out, or having sex. So these are things that we all are experiencing when our brains are actually experiencing the process of us trying to complete a task or trying to find satisfaction in what we are doing. And we all have experienced these things in different ways. As I spoke to earlier about cleaning your house or doing the things you need to do around your house, there are triggers in your brain that helps you relieve yourself or feel that release of, hey, I did this goal. I made this thing happen in my life, and I was able to accomplish the thing that I had set out to do. And one of the things I think is important for us to note today is that in order for us to really grow or be effective in our lives, we got to reflect and see the things that we have done. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more later, but we have to reflect and look at the things that we completed. I would encourage you that it is November and as we get to the end of the year, I would encourage you to make a list. Take some paper and make a list of some things that you've accomplished in 2023 and some things that you have finished in 2023, because those things will help you see that you are much further along than you perceive and believe. I think it's actually important for us to reflect in a way that causes us to recognize what we have actually done and actually help us see that we are not in the same place we were before. And this is a process that all of us experience. This is the natural process that all of us need to take into consideration as we're growing in our lives, as you're going about the work that you're doing, as you're going about the tasks that you have for this year. And we've seen it in our work lives, where at the end of the year, you have a end of the year review at your job. You have these things that happen as it relates to your work that gets to show you your data points of what you have accomplished throughout the year. And that is important for you and I. We need to see that we completed something. Whether it's short term or long term, the completion of something has power to it. It has the ability to push us, cause us to press forward and believe that we can do more. My second point, as we've been talking, is you can move on. One of the important things about finishing is that when you end something, it actually is the beginning of a new stage and phase. And I've shared this example on here before about how powerful it is for an individual to look at buildings, that every building you see, every skyscraper, every multiple story building we have ever seen, there is a roof to a floor, but that roof on that floor or the ceiling to that floor is the floor to the next level. Kind of funny that I said it that way, but the ceiling is the floor for the next level. And when you finish one floor, you're motivated to go to the next one. You have to keep moving forward. You have to keep doing new things. Just here in the last few weeks, my favorite baseball team growing up as a kid and still is my favorite baseball team, the Texas Rangers, actually won the World Series for the first time in franchise history, which was just a huge thing to watch and see. I was literally watching the game when the Rangers won the World Series, and I was just so excited because it was the first time in franchise history they had won a title. But the interesting part, even about that, though they won the title, there's already conversations about next season because it is the end of one thing and the beginning of a new. There's already conversations about players that are potentially moving around and changing teams because there is still a new opportunity. There's a champion every year, but a new season will come. The Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year, but we're not talking about the Kansas City Chiefs winning this year because they haven't won again yet, right? They haven't wiped out the teams in the league. There are people right now, they are not talking about what happened in February of 2023. They're talking about what's about to happen in February of 2024. Because every year there's a thing happening where you're moving forward. There's every year, every season, these teams get an opportunity to start over and become better. And even looking at the Rangers, of the past 3 or 4 years, they have been a terrible team. They had one of the worst records in the league in 2020, where there was only like 50 or 60 games that was played throughout the season, and they had a horrible year. They had a terrible season. The next season, that the second worst record in the league. The following season, last year, they had the seventh worst record in the league. They lost over 100 games in the last 2 seasons, but yet they come back this year after losing the last 2 years, and the previous winners were the Atlanta Braves and the Houston Astros. They turn around and come back this season and are the world champions. Why? Because they recognize that they need to move on from those bad years. That the front office said, we're going to spend the money. We're going to take the time to recruit players to come and play for us that can help us be a championship team. And the guys stepped up. The bullpen stepped up. They played better than they have been playing all year. They became within a half game of winning the division title, and they were the better team in the end. They beat the best teams in their conference. The best team, the Orioles. The Orioles was the best team in the American League this year. And I know I'm spending a lot of time on baseball right now, but I'm just talking about it. I'm using an example. But the Orioles were the best team in the American League this year, and they beat the Orioles. They swept the Orioles. They beat the defending champions Houston Astros, right? Like they were a team that showed up and proved that they could be the better team in the league. And they showed up in a way and saying, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to go after our goals. We're not going to look back and remember that we last year lost 100 games. And the year before that lost 100 games. And the year before that had a terrible season. They put those things behind them. They said, you know what? We are going to be the best team we possibly can be, and we're going to do all that we need to do to become that team. And here's what's the encouragement for you and I is that we have the ability to do that in our lives. You have the ability right now to change course. You have the ability, even as we go into the end of the year and we're trying to figure out how to finish 2023, you still have a chance to change directions and pivot. You have an opportunity right now to go in a different direction. And it's important for you and I to do that and consider that, because our world is moving very fast right now. So many things are happening. But you are the only person that could pivot in your own life. Nobody's going to do that for you. You got to make the decision that you're going to go in a different direction. And I think that's super important for you and I. There's a workout exercise that is called rebounding. It's so interesting that as we talk about moving forward, that there's a exercise called rebounding. Basically, this exercise is performed while jumping on a mini trampoline, and it can help work the muscles in the legs, increase your endurance, strengthen your bones, and amongst a number of benefits. It also allows you to work your cardiovascular system without taxing your body. Now, this is important because that particular exercise gives you the ability to do some stuff that you need to do in the process of trying to get healthy and better. But it also is another example of how you can move forward. A lot of us need rebounds in our lives. A lot of us need to believe that we can make a comeback, that we can have a better outcome than we had before, that when we fell short at one point, we can actually step up to the plate the next time and do better. I've talked about this a lot on here because I think it's important. Athletes have short memories. They use their short memory. We talked about memory earlier this year, how important it is to understand that you cannot allow yourself to dwell on the things you failed at. You got to see them as lessons. You got to see them as building blocks for the next thing in your life. You can't spend all of your time focused on the fact that you did not get to the things that you want to get to. And it's important for you to understand that, and it's necessary because as we're trying to finish out 2023, we got to keep some things in focus and recognize that you and I right now, we can't afford to stop moving. We can't afford to be like, you know what, there's not a chance for me to get better. There's not a chance for me to move in a positive direction. There's still things that I'm falling short in. And I'm telling you right now, if you keep moving, if you keep making the desired, hey, I'm going to keep taking more steps. I'm going to keep doing some things that I hadn't done before. I'm going to keep pushing forward. I'm going to keep moving in some ways that is necessary and needed for me. I think that's important. I think that's important for you and I to continuously move forward, to continuously take those steps, continuously put ourselves in better positions, put ourselves in spaces that are helpful for us. And I think we got to be willing to do that. And so, with that being said, I'm going to take a break right here and we'll be right back after these messages. Hi, everybody. Lee here, and I want to give some information to you. Do you need someone to host an event or come and speak at your event? You can now book yours truly. Book me for your event by visiting www.leeascott.com. I am so excited to connect with you and do work with you. Much love, and let's get started. And we are back. Thank you for still being here as we talk about life, leadership, and legacy on this episode. And we talk about finishing strong. I've always kind of had an episode towards the end of the season to talk about finishing strong and actually looking at what it takes to go into the new year with a better and more positive perspective. I've always tried to kind of center that at the end of the year, and it seems to be on brand and on theme for me. But I think it is super important that we put those other two things that we talked about today, whether it be completing a task or looking at how we can move forward in our lives. I got two more points, and I hope these points will inspire you. My third point that I want to give to you before I get you out of here is finishing becomes a marker in life. Finishing becomes a marker in life. Now you might be asking, Lee, what do you mean by finishing becomes a marker in life? Many of us have had moments, if you've had a pretty normal childhood, you remember finishing school. You remember finishing elementary school or grade school for some of you, no matter where you are in the world, they might call it different things. You finish grade school and you finish secondary school, and you had a graduation at the end of that tenure, your time, those 12 to 13 years, if you include kindergarten or preschool. And there's something powerful about that ending because it is a marker in your life. Most people, when they graduate from high school, they're around 17 or 18 years old. And there's something that happens in your life when you leave that space. There's some things that transpired at that time in your life. You remember that your friends at the time. You remember clubs you're involved in. You remember the fun things that you had, whether you were involved in homecoming or were you involved in homecoming court, if you won a championship at your school. All these different things were memories. The clubs that you were involved in, those are memories, and those memories are markers in your life. And what's powerful is when you have reunions. When your graduating class has a reunion, you have the opportunity to come back and mark the moment in your life. When you all see each other again, you get an opportunity to relive or reflect on a season or time in your life. Now, for every person, that may not be a good or wonderful time to think about, but those markers have the ability to provide research and information for the next thing. Because 18-year-old Lee is not the same as 30-year-old Lee. 18, 19-year-old Lee was a different person than I am now at 30. And I think it's been profound to recognize that even in my own life, I can reflect on my 18-year-old self, 17, 18-year-old self, and recognize how much I have grown, how much I have changed as a person, how many things have happened in my life because that was a marker. I can look back at photos. I can look back at times that I was engaged in things at that point in my life. I often think about it, and I've shared on here before, of me being involved in speech and debate in high school. I was a pretty shy kid in early high school. Still, from even most of high school, I was pretty shy. And because of speech and debate, it showed me that I had the ability to be a good speaker, that I had this gift for communication, that I actually had to work at this thing that I was doing all the time, but didn't know that I could be effective at. And it was because I took the time to recognize that I should get involved in this. And that thing became a marker for me. That thing, that season, that time of me being on a speech and debate team became a marker. It became something in my life I can reflect on and say, hey, because of that, I'm able to do this. But let's be clear, all the markers in your life aren't always positive. The markers in your life aren't always a beautiful or great thing. Some of those markers are depressing. Some of those markers are saddening, but it motivates you to do something. It motivates responses. Markers motivate responses. Markers have the ability to push you to do something that you probably wouldn't have done before because it was actually causing you to go into a different direction. And the question I want to ask you is, what are those markers in your life? What are some things you can look back on and say, man, had not this happened, I probably wouldn't have done this. Had not this failure happened, or had not this door opened, or had not this relationship happened, or had not this friendship happened, I may or may not have done this. Had not this product come out, had not this opportunity that I was afforded, had not these things happened, I probably would have not done anything, or probably would have done something different. Like, if you really look back at your life, you can see moments where that is true, where you literally, right now, as I'm talking to you, as I'm sharing with you, whether you're listening or watching this, you can look back and reflect and say, you know what? I had been in that class, had not I been in that relationship, had not been in that environment, God only knows what my life would look like. I was sharing with a coworker of mine actually this past week about a program that was in the school district that I was in here in Jackson, called Jackson Public Schools. We had this program called Open Doors, and I was expressing to her that Open Doors went from about second to seventh or eighth grade, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. And just simply the fact that I was in Open Doors, I would leave my regular class every single day and go and be in this Open Doors class where we were doing creative stuff. We were drawing, and we were doing interesting problem-solving tasks. How that shaped me as a person, how it shaped my creativity, how it shaped my ability to see myself in a unique and different way. I was even expressing to her that it had I not done that, I might have been even more of an anxious kid, because, and even though I do with some level of anxiety anyway, the Open Doors actually gave me an opportunity for self-expression. Self-expression was something that was needed for me at the time. I was very, very shy kid. I was a very anxious kid, but it gave me an opportunity to go into the space and do some stuff that was different. The same thing happened when I was in high school. How literally when I was at Murrah High School my freshman year here in Jackson, and when I was in APAC, and we had a school split that happened where literally I'm from South Jackson. I grew up, born and raised in South Jackson, and still live in South Jackson. And what ended up happening was students that were in the academic program for APAC, they ended up splitting our classes. They split it up, and they sent the kids that were from South Jackson to Forest Hill High School, and those who were in the performing arts school and lived out north, or just in academics that lived out north, they went to Murrah, where there was a decision made my freshman year to audition for the performing arts school, because I was just in academics. I had not gotten to the performing arts school into high school, but that moment of auditioning changed my life. I ended up staying at the same school. I ended up staying at the same place. And what's so interesting is, had I not done that, I would have went to Forest Hill, and my whole life would be totally different. Because of some of the individuals and friends that I had in middle school, we became distant, or our lives went into two different directions, whether it was good or bad, because of a marker, because of something that changed this in the trajectory of our lives. What's some things that has happened in your life that one decision changed the trajectory of your life? One connection changed. What are some things you can look back on and say, man, these things happened, and now I am where I am because of these things? I think you should reflect even about this year. What are some things that have happened in 2023 that you can look back and say, these were markers in my life? For me, definitely this year, for me, having come into the year, working at one place and seeing a lot of changes that we were going through at that organization, that was a marker in my life. It was a marker in my life when my girlfriend and I actually became official and got in a relationship. It was a marker in my life for her to meet some of my best friends. That was a marker in my life. It was a marker in my life to take her to the airport and watch her fly back to her home country of Brazil, and us deal with being long distance, right? Like, those were markers in our relationship. That's a marker in my life. It was a marker in my life turning 30 this year. It was a marker in my life getting my dog Luna. I hadn't had a dog since I was a kid. That was a marker. 5-10 years from now, I'll look back and remember these moments. Remember what happened at this time of my life. It's a mark in my life that I changed jobs at the time I changed jobs. Right? Like, these are markers. Me getting in, you have to look back and remember, what are the things that have happened to me this year? I know it might be difficult for you and to some degree, but you have to be willing to look back and actually analyze and process those things, because that helps you in your ability to finish. That helps you in your ability to recognize that there's something next for you. And my last point for us today is stay to see the results. You know, one of the things I think is super important as I'm ending is that sometimes we don't recognize that it is actually a blessing to see the results of your work. It is actually quite unusual, if you look historically, that people get to see the manifestation of their work. And there are two men that came to my mind as I was thinking about this point. In particular, it was Jesse Jackson, and the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and Congressman John Lewis. As many of us know, Jesse Jackson and John Lewis were two men that were involved in the civil rights movement. They're significant figures in the civil rights movement. And John Lewis, as I've shared on here before, John Lewis was one of the 6 organizers for the March on Washington in 1963. He actually, at the time, was about 21 years old. He was a leader in SNCC at the time. And we know the story, John's story, of how he led the march. He led a march on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Him, and along with some other leaders, led a march on the Edmund Pettus Bridge that we know historically as Bloody Sunday, because it became a very, very powerful and horrendous thing happening. Even John Lewis himself had been beaten so bad that the back of his head was bleeding. I hate to be graphic, but this is a reality that happened to John Lewis, and he survived this moment in history. And every year since that thing happened, he had conducted a march up until his death in 2020 on that very bridge, on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Jesse Jackson, as I was stating earlier, went on to start the Rainbow Push Coalition, where he was advocating for social justice issues across the gambit of issues. Like, he really got involved. And in 1988, he ran for president. He was with the second African American after Shirley Chisholm, who did it in 1972 to run for president. And Jesse Jackson actually won some states. And because of Jackson's efforts, his charisma, his gravitas, he had such power in his speeches. He was so engaging, and he really, really was impactful at the time. Jesse Jackson actually challenged the status quo, and I believe we were in 84 and 88, if I'm not mistaken. And he really challenged the status quo at the time. And both of these men, Jesse Jackson and John Lewis, lived long enough to see the election of Barack Obama in 2008. The thing that these men were fighting for, that liberty and justice for all, to see African Americans be successful in such a way in American history. They lived long enough. There is video. You can go on YouTube right now. There is video and photos of Jesse Jackson literally there on election night, In Chicago, when Barack Obama wins the presidency, you can see this man literally in tears. That he lived to see something that so many of the men and women he fought for civil rights with did not get to see. They didn't get to see the manifestation of their dreams. They didn't get to see the story be fulfilled. They didn't get an opportunity to see that. John Lewis was there in 2015, 2016, when they opened the Museum of African American History. John Lewis spoke at this thing. John Lewis continued to do his marches, and he was able to commemorate the march of Selma and actually had President Obama and even President Bush and so many other leaders walk with him across the Edmund Pettus Bridge like 50 years later. They were able to do that. Why? Because they got an opportunity to live long enough to see the results of their dream. It's so important for you and I to recognize that if we get the opportunity to see the results, it is a blessing. It is a powerful thing that you got to see the manifestation. You got to see the end point of what you were trying to do with your life. It's so important that you literally got to see things come to pass in your life. I often think about people in my own family. One of my grandfathers got to live to see that his grandson got a master's degree, but the other one didn't. And I have to remember that my granddaddy Isaac got blessed because he was able to see it. And his mind was well enough to where he was cognizant of this thing happening. We can't take that for granted. This man only has a third grade education. I can't take for granted that this man in his lifetime got to see something that had not happened yet. I give my leadership definition that it is seeing something that has not happened yet and taking people, processes, and organizations in that direction. I don't say that all willy-nilly. I say that because I recognize that we have to understand that in order for us to get to the next level, we have to lead that way. And as we're finishing up 2023, I hope that you keep in mind and bear in mind that you and I have some things to be grateful for. You and I have some things to look back at and say, man, I actually did some amazing stuff in my time this year. I actually contributed to society in a new and profound way. I actually am moving in the right direction. Or actually in 2024, I got some things to do better. Hey, let me start right now in 2023 because I screwed up most of the year. I got some stuff to do better in this upcoming year, and I'm going to start now. I'm going to get the momentum now. The momentum has already started. I'm already in 2024. I'm already starting before everybody else starts. So I'm going to do what I need to do to make that thing happen. And I hope that today you were inspired to finish where you are. That you won't run away from processes anymore. That you won't run away from situations that are causing you to grow and become better. That you recognize it right now, you and I can do some things that are significant and that can change the world around us. Much love. I hope you were inspired, and I will see you next time on the season finale of Leading with Lee. I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee. If you have not done it yet, subscribe on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. If you want to get more information and connect with me, visit me at www.leeascott.com or follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Lee A. Scott II or Lee A. Scott II. So, thank you for watching, much love, and let's get started.